Thank you for joining us here today. I am Polly Dawkins. I'm the Executive Director of the Davis Phinney Foundation, and I am here for our July Care Partner Meetup. And without further ado, Connie Carpenter-Phinney.
Thank you, Polly, and happy to be here from Boulder, Colorado. We have people from all over, and I really appreciate that. We got Brian from Canada, so welcome to the Canadians. Appreciate you. Appreciate everyone who signs in. And, you know, typically about half of you signing in are new, or maybe a third of you are new to our Care Partner Meetup. So I'll do a few introductions. I won't belabor them because you'll kind of get the gist as we go along. I am the care partner for my husband, Davis Phinney, whose name is on the foundation. And he's been living with Parkinson's. We've been living with Parkinson's since since 2000. And so I'd like to, I'm in it. I'm a veteran. I've been in it a long time. And I'm joined by two other veterans, the beautiful Gail Gittin, who, as many of you know, is an ambassador with the foundation and lost her husband, Gene, to Parkinson's 3 years ago, and is still serving as the most amazing counselor and friend to any care partner who needs a hand and expertise. So thank you, Gail, for joining us. She's also in Boulder. And Pat, I'm not sure if you're in Las Vegas, but Pat's wife, Sid, was diagnosed more than a decade ago, and they've just returned from their summer road trip. Thanks for being with us. Pat's a school teacher, so he is off during the summers and not joining us from the classroom. Thanks for being here, Pat. And we got, yeah, you're on mute, Pat, so come on. We've got a special guest though. We've talked a lot about, we've dodged the topic, we've danced around, we've talked to it, about it, not really in depth, palliative care, and also the role of the chaplain and spiritual care in our journey through this life, many of us as care partners, and also for the person with Parkinson's. And you may remember we had the Dr. Joy Fleischer here from Rush University, and she's also been part of our care partner training, which you can access through the website and the link that we'll put up on the right, which gives you a lot of information. Dirk, I think you work with Jory at Rush University, among other duties, and Dirk Labuschagne is joining us from the Chicago area, and we're so happy to have you as our first chaplain. No, actually not our first chaplain, because we had Judy Long here and our first year. That's right. Yeah, so not our first. But definitely, we're really curious about what you have to say, and I would like to know just a little bit about how you describe your job, what you do, and then we're going to pause for a second. But a couple words from you first.
Sure. Well, thank you. It's really good to be with all of you, and I have to say, hearing that I'm the second chaplain only to Judy Long feels like quite the person to follow. So, because I've worked with her a little bit, and she's wonderful. But yeah, as you said, I'm in the Chicago area. I'm originally from South Africa. I've worked with Dr. Fleischer maybe for about 3 years or so now, and that's mainly in the neuropalliative care clinic that she has here at Rush. So yeah, how do I describe my work? So I'm involved in chaplaincy training, so helping chaplains, so students who are interested in kind of learning more of the chaplaincy skills to get them trained and prepared for that kind of work. But then I'm also kind of on a part-time basis involved in the work with Dr. Fleischer. So I saw the chat popped up that my audio is still not great. Do you all want me to kind of try to problems, or I don't know, try to see what it's like without my earphones, or?
Yeah, let's try that. It is a tiny bit, I'd say, tinny or fuzzy as was noticed. Okay. So you could try with that. Let's see if that works. I can understand you, so that's good, but let's make it.
Okay. Is this any better or?
It is.
Yes, it
Okay.
is. Yeah, that's
Great.
great.
Let's go. Let's go this way then.
Well, Dirk, I'm glad you're familiar with Judy's work. I've done her course, as well as we've spent some time with her and had her as a speaker at some of our events. And she is was trained at the Zen Upaya Institute. Where did you do your training?
So I did some graduate work in theology and divinity. That's kind of I guess a little outdated term for it. I'm here in Chicago at a local Presbyterian seminary, so that's my tradition. I'm Christian Presbyterian, and then my chaplaincy training I did here at Rush. I've worked at a couple other hospitals since then, but came back to Rush.
So with that, probably should we ask a couple questions first?
Yeah.
And we were kind of curious what people that are listening, what your level of experience is, and that might help inform our conversation, Dirk. Okay.
So let's ask with a bigger question, a broader question first. And I'm going to launch it here. Just a yes/no question for all of you.
It didn't stay up there, Polly, for me.
Do you all see it?
I don't know.
I will relaunch the poll.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Yep.
All right. Does religion or spirituality play a role in your life?
We won't hold you to your answer. We're just curious how that fits in, and that will help inform our conversation.
About 80% of you have responded. Actually, 85% of you. You all are quite good at polls today. All righty. All right, I'm going to end poll. Anybody want to venture a guess?
60-40. 60-40, yes. What do you think, Dirk?
Well, it depends how you define the spirituality, right? But let's say 60%.
Okay. Gail, any guesses? Want to share it really quickly?
Oh boy. I would have to go even maybe higher than 60%.
Gail would win.
Oh, nice. Okay. 77% say yes. Great.
Wonderful.
Well, that's awesome, because then this will be even more applicable. That's great. We can, we're going to help everyone today though.
Yes,
so.
but it will help. It will also,
fret.
exactly. All
We're
right.
not
One last question for all of you. And just, working on my skills here. I'm going to launch this poll. Tell me if you can see it. Do you have, or have you had, a chaplain on your support team? This one I'm going to ask Dirk to make a guess as to what the percentages are. It's harder because you have 3 things to guess from. Yes, no, or I don't even know what a chaplain is.
I would say the majority would say no, because at least from what I know, it's quite rare to have a chaplain, especially in the outpatient setting.
And you would be right.
Oh, okay. What was the number?
Bear with me. 82% don't have a chaplain. 4% don't know what a chaplain is and what role a chaplain can play in supportive care and Parkinson's.
Yeah.
So great to know the baseline. Thanks everybody for answering. I'll let you take it from here.
This is part of, a movement that's been underway for a while, but this whole concept of, looking after the whole person, not just the disease, right? So we know when our person is diagnosed with Parkinson's that they'll need help from other sectors. Physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy are the 3, that come up right away. But there's more than that, right? And palliative care is a word that we've been hearing a lot about. We've done some webinars on. We had a victory summit around that, but a lot of people don't understand this concept of palliative care. Who wants to define it for me? Dirk or Polly? Dirk, do you have a good definition?
Well, so I don't know if it's a good definition. The definition I like is that palliative care is about living as well as you can for as long as you can. And for me, that means you have to have all those domains. I mean, all the ones that you mentioned, but maybe even more attended to in order to really kind of value this holistic quality of life, knowing that, yes, the physical is really important, but it's really about more than that.
Sure. Yeah. And it's ironic that in our culture, especially, we think of needing a chaplain for end of life, or that's when it's offered to us in a hospital, is when we're more toward end of life and we're maybe grasping a little bit more, rather than when we're seeking answers to some questions about how we can live better, which is your definition, which I think is an excellent one. And it's not to be confused with hospice care. This is, as Polly said, supportive care is really another way to look at it. Is how can you as a human being be supported? What do you need to be supported? And it's our friends, it's our medical team, and it's some support on a spiritual level, because anytime you're diagnosed, and even from the get-go when you're diagnosed, you have an existential question. Why me? Especially, well, at any age, actually, I was going to say, especially, my husband, we were so young when he was diagnosed. So why me? We didn't spend a lot of time with that, but I think it's a valuable question. And even if you're into your 70s, which many of you are, and you've suddenly been diagnosed after, and maybe just retired, you're saying, why me? Why now? Right? Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. And is that the kind of question you might deal with, is helping people to come to peace with those kind of questions, or what do you experience? Dirk, tell us about kind of a little bit about what you experience in your practice.
Yeah, that question definitely comes up a lot, and I think the kind of misperception is that chaplains would be the ones that give the answer to those questions, and we're really not. I mean, that's such a big part of the training, is to kind of not get hooked in trying to answer that question for someone else. So a chaplain, when they work at their best, they're able to create a non-anxious, non-judgmental space for a person who's wrestling with that question, to help them explore it based on their own beliefs and their own resources around that question.
Oh. What did you say after non-anxious and
non-judgmental?
Non-judgmental. Okay.
So to kind of like have, because of our education of knowing what different ways, what different orienting systems people might have in which they explore that question, we're able to kind of hold that space for them to do it. Without, and also knowing that there really isn't kind of like easy answer to that why question. So it's really about what is important for you as you wrestle with it, and how helping and having someone that can be kind of like a conversation partner for you while this develops.
And overall, the goal is to ask the person that's suffering what would you be asking them that might help them? Or are they asking you? I guess you're saying they're asking you maybe for an answer, and you're saying.
Yeah. I want to be careful to offer easy answers. So I would say I would first explore with them, how do they view the world? Like in their mind, or based on their beliefs or values, how does the world make sense for them? So that might be informed by a specific religion or a specific way about how illness works in the world, or why difficult things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think people run into the answers that others give them, or the answers that that the world or the community tries to get them around why things happen are not satisfied, right? Sometimes it's the kind of like, oh, it's because you did something bad, or it's because of whatever. And, we know how painful those kind of easy answers can be. So creating a space where someone can really be vulnerable and really wrestle with that question for themselves, I would say that would be the main thing we offer. But that normally takes time, right? So it takes time to kind of engage around that question, to build trust with someone, to really risk voicing the hard questions, and then kind of journeying with them as they wrestle with it.
Are you typically conversing with both the care partner and the person with Parkinson's, or do you find yourself primarily with the person with Parkinson's?
It kind of depends. I would say most of the time it's not with both of them. I would say most of my time with Dr. Fleiser's clinic has been with the care partners. I think part of that is because sometimes the care partners don't have many people with whom they can be truly honest about how they're feeling and the kind of questions that they have, the kind of struggles that they have. So sometimes that it's helpful to just have a kind of separate space to really kind of say, goodness, this is hard, I'm struggling, why? This is not how I pictured my life, or, whatever.
Can I just reiterate that, because that's such a good point, is that the care partner, we all know this, but I just want to say it because you've just acknowledged it. The care partner we have so few people that we can tell how hard it is and be honest. And we've talked about this on here, Dirk, where people ask you how you're doing, and half the time you just want to say fine, because you don't know how deep to dive into the pool. You don't know if you're at the shallow end or the deep end, right? And so just thinking of it, like, linger on that for a moment, is one reason maybe to find a chaplain in your life, and to include that on your team if possible. And we got questions about that too. How do we find you? People like you, is to just know that maybe that's somebody that can help you empty your well of grief and concern and anxiety in order to fill up with other things. I think that's kind of what I'm hearing you say, but
Yes.
I appreciate you for taking a pause to just think on that. And can we talk about that? Like, should we ask a few of those questions?
Yeah, a couple of basic questions. Let's see. Dennis asks, how do you find a chaplain or perhaps an advisor?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I would begin with your provider. So if you are seeing someone at a clinic, kind of say, hey, what kind of resources do you have? Sometimes the clinic might not have a chaplain who's dedicated to their team, but they have a chaplaincy department. So sometimes it takes some advocacy from the physician to reach out to that department and say, hey, we've really been getting questions for people needing to talk with someone. So I would start there, kind of naming both the kind of poll that you showed as well. Is that it's quite it's not as common as it should be, or as I would want it to be, to have a chaplain on the neuropalliative clinic.
And I think too, it's fairly common to find a chaplain or two or more affiliated with the big hospital. They may not have experience in Parkinson's per se, but they may still be able to offer you quite a bit of support and ultimately lead you down the path to finding the right person. I had experience with finding a chaplain when my husband's mother had COVID and was locked into a memory care center. And there was a lot of stress and an absolute lack of being able to control anything in those moments. And fortunately, I had met someone who introduced me to a chaplain who just gave me, just a few references, but also just the time and space to, be able to process what was happening, and then instructed us to, create a little shrine in your home and light a candle every night and just spend a little time, thinking positive thoughts about, my mother-in-law. And, I think we found it was a nice little ritual and I think ritual is part of, religion and part of the human experience, to create a ritual around something that might help us to relieve our anxiety, especially over things we can't control, because for the most part, we can't control our person's journey with Parkinson's, or sometimes our feelings around those. And what we can work on is our feelings. And I think that's maybe a lot of what you're doing with people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And kind of seeing what, like you mentioned, what kind of things are important to people, what kind of practices are helpful. So creating ritual around that, and of course being sensitive to what their religious background might be important to, and not suggesting things that aren't really part of their tradition or their beliefs. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you had a helpful chaplain as well, Connie.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. Super helpful.
Judy asks in the chat, could you just define the difference between a chaplain versus a minister or a pastor or some other spiritual leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say typically a minister or pastor would be some kind of leader in a specific religious community. And a healthcare chaplain, there's some variety among hospitals in the US, but the kind of predominant main qualification is at least a graduate degree, and then at least a year-long training and like 2,000 hours of experience, because the kind of skills that you need to be a healthcare chaplain, it's not always the same as being a minister or pastor in a religious tradition. There is some overlap, but there are specific skills, mainly around communication, creating this kind of space that I talked about, that chaplains are specifically trained for. And then also just general kind of sensitivity to not, impose one's own beliefs onto someone, which of course is quite different from being a leader in a religious community. So that kind of sensitivity, being careful to honor the vulnerability of patients and all that goes along with that in the way that we work with people.
Thanks for that.
Religion and specific faiths are so they can be polarizing, right? So I feel like a chaplain is Switzerland. You're neutral, and you're wealthy. You have a wealth of knowledge, and that's so important to us, right? Like because we need that knowledge, and we need your capacity to absorb, maybe our flawed human experience and our human emotions, which make it really hard. And I think we're all struggling to be better, to enjoy our lives more, first of all, and then to be better in our capacity as a care partner. And I would view you as someone that could, help me or help others do that. And again, it's a team. And so we think about this as a sports team, as well as a medical team. We're the medical team, everybody's so busy out there, right? It's hard to get our appointments. It's hard to go to all our appointments. It's hard to keep track of, for some of you, what pills your person with Parkinson's is taking. And then the overwhelm aspect of it is so huge that you need to find parts of your team, which includes, your own wellness. And this is could be a big part of that. So I would encourage people to, either try with your provider. We talked about this in our last session when we were talking about finding a psychologist, but also start by calling the hospital itself and asking who is affiliated, and then they will have probably other referrals for you. If not, maybe the chaplain in residency at a hospital wouldn't be able to serve you if you're not there, but then where do you go? Or there's some great comments as well I've seen in the chat about other options, where to look. And even consider attending a church with one of your friends who is, a valued, listener to you, and see what might be offered there. Late in life, maybe you haven't attended a church, or maybe you become disillusioned and just try something new and different. I think that's another approach to finding that person for your team. You won't find them if you don't seek them out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and don't be afraid of if you try something out, if you do go to a church and you realize, oh, this is not for me, to stop trying, because yes, there's definitely going to be religious communities that's not a good fit for you, and so keep trying. I recently got a referral from Dr. Fleischer's clinic for someone who wanted to kind of just connect back to their own spirituality, for various reasons, kind of got disconnected. And so we just started there. We kind of talked about, if you think back on the things that you did like when you were more kind of religiously active, what were those things? And the person identified kind of their own personal devotional time and spending some time in prayerful meditation. So it wasn't necessarily going back to attending mass or going to church. It was more about the kind of personal, reflective aspect of it. And we spent some time kind of just dialoguing around what it's like to use some of those practices, what come up, and then reflecting together. So it can really be a quite simple start, as long as I think it goes along with some intentionality and some determination, because you might not, like we've talked about, find something the first time you try to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. Gail or Pat, did you have any questions or want to weigh in? Or
Well, I just want to weigh in on rituals. Rituals are very helpful during that period of time that you're doing your ritual, whether it's like you have breathing each time that we start our program. That's a ritual that centers us. But some rituals, or many rituals, are that moment where you can focus on something other than what your brain is constantly talking to you about. That could be negative. So performing these rituals, whatever they might be, is a chance for respite and spirituality. And that way, it just gives you a bit of a break.
yeah, great comment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pat, anything coming up for you
Well,
or questions?
I tend to agree with Gail there. The ritual, when things get tough or get bogged down, it's good to take a moment to breathe like we do here, to have a reflection on what the purpose of life is and why we're, this isn't something that that was put upon us to I mean, we're in life to be challenged and to grow and to progress and all that, and this is all our opportunity to do the best we can, and sometimes we need a little help with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was listening to a podcast today on being with Krista Tippett. You like her too, don't you, Dirk? She's great. Anyway, she was interviewing Atwell Gwande, who is a surgeon, and he's written a number of books. I admire his writing deeply. Many of you may be familiar with On Mortal, which is one of his books, and another, was just this whole concept of better and how surgeons can be better, how to improve at what they do, and yet he spends a lot of his energy and time not only as a surgeon but interviewing people about various topics related to care and trying to find better care. And in the interview with Krista Tippett, he talks about how to enable well-being, and he talks about palliative care and how successful it is, in particular for it's not hospice care. It's actually, in many cases, it's prolonging life. It's not looking at end of life. It's actually asking you, what does a good day look like? And I love this concept of what does a good day look like, because I think a lot of that goes back to your own personal spirituality and your goal, your inner world of what will satisfy me. And we have to ask our person with Parkinson's that, but we also have to ask ourselves. And so and if our doctors are asking us that, if our medical team is asking us, what does it look like for you, to be, what does it look like to be happy? And they know your limitations, they know you have Parkinson's disease, or they know you're caring for someone with Parkinson's. And it's not like you're not, 18 years old with the world in front of you. You're, in a whole different place, and it's a much wiser place. So I think just going over and thinking about this concept of what does a good day look like? And what are the ingredients of that? And slowing yourself down would be a nice place to start too. But thank you. Kayla just put up the link in the and Atwul's name in the his name's misspelled. It's actually Atwul. I think it's ATWUL.
It's ATUL. I'll put up his Atul.
Okay.
There's his, yeah.
But he's very well spoken on this topic, I think, and it's helpful. Any thoughts about that, Dirk? You were nodding.
Oh yeah, I just agreed with everything that you said. Yeah, I think that intentionality is really important, and like you said, anything that helps you kind of connect to life or your own kind of what is life giving to you, for me, it's all part of spirituality. So, I think there are things like gratitude practices or being intentional while you go on a walk to see what gives you a sense of awe, mindfulness practices. Like that's all the kind of like tapping into the things that help you keep going or even help you thrive. And that's really challenging circumstances.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be able to put my brain on a shelf for a couple of hours a day and just have nothing to do with my brain anymore because of that internal chatter. And
Yeah.
I spoke to you about a podcast that I heard having to do with that internal chatter. Any distraction is great for giving us that rest. And if spirituality or doing perform certain acts that keep your brain occupied is a good way to take that nice break from the constant stresses.
Yeah. And Bruce put a great quote in there on the chat about a person with multiple handicaps, not Parkinson's, saying, I have good days and I have better days. Makes me think of you actually, Pat, with Sid, because you've had such a rough year and have rebounded so amazingly through, so many challenges over this past year. And I'm sure it's not easy. And would you agree with that I have good days and better days, or how do you guys look at it? Because
it's interesting you should say that, because I do have good days, I have better days, but then there are some not so good days too. But we have to work through those.
If I can just add something that Pat said. Oh, are you able to talk now, Pat?
No, go ahead.
So I was just going to say what you mentioned about sometimes having bad days. I agree that is important to acknowledge for oneself too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in the other people checking in on us, or just our own kind of impulses, or is to always try to focus on the positive. And I agree there's a way that focusing on the positive is helpful, but not if it keeps us from just feeling all that's going on with us either. So I feel like that's something that chaplains or psychologists or social workers are helpful as well, to just have a safe space with someone where you could just voice the difficult emotions that you feel like and just kind of get it out, so that you then again can be positive and hopeful and focused.
Yeah.
So I think it's a careful balance to hold, and yet I think both of those things are important.
I think this too is where community comes in, and meeting other people where you are right now and where we all are, in this care partner world, and whether or not you belong to or have joined or have the opportunity to be included in a Care Partner support network of any sort that's more intimate than this. I hope you are. But also just getting out into the community and meeting other people with Parkinson's can be not only informative, but very inspiring for your own life, to help you be understood and kind of keep moving forward, even when it doesn't feel like we're moving forward. Time will continue to advance. And so, we're on that treadmill as well, though it doesn't feel like it very often. And sometimes we feel really stuck. And I think that being able to get some of these emotions out is important, and even deepening your emotions around your challenges, I think, is also part of the spiritual experience and the religious experience of our humanity and understanding ourselves. I don't know if I've said that right, but that's what it feels like to me. Dirk, weigh in. Tell me something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you were saying that, I was thinking about the book of Psalms, which is a book in the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, and if you read those Psalms, it's really a lot of up and down. Like at some point, the psalmist is like, God, why? Like everyone is against me. It's hard. My life sucks. And, that's not in the Bible, but, and it's kind of like you have to get all of that out. And then you see the psalmist kind of progressing to say like, and I know God is there for me. And I know things are going to be okay. It's like you have to get it out, you have to voice it. Sometimes it might be in prayer to God, or it might be to a close friend or a community who gets it. But getting those things out is actually helpful sometimes to get to a place of more resolve or peace around that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know what happens to me is you have so many negative feelings that there's a lot of guilt, and you think, oh, how I must be a horrible person. I must be a terrible caregiver if I think this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think groups need to really get together and not only say, oh yeah, rah, 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 think positive, take care of yourself. You have to say, you have to say what you're really feeling. And otherwise, there's going to be guilt. So if everyone knows that we all feel this way, then it's a human experience that we all have. And there shouldn't be any guilt or pain involved with that. And that you're not a horrible person. I mean, I hear all these things and it just triggers all the memories. And you have to look for care, but you have to be careful. You got to get to people that'll tell you the bad stuff, so that you're not the only one thinking all that bad stuff.
Well, and also, Gail, what you bring up is so important because it allows you not only to be heard, but then also to share the experience. It takes it off your shoulders, and the notion of guilt is, us feeling like we have to apologize for being maybe perhaps more well than our person with Parkinson's, and we didn't roll, we weren't in charge of rolling those dice, right? And so I think that's
everyone's telling you you're doing a great job, and you're thinking, oh, I suck at this. I'm a horrible caregiver. I didn't do this. He fell. I should have done that. I shouldn't have put the pills out right. And you've got to hear people tell you that they also feel the same way.
Yeah.
You have to hear that. Otherwise, you can belong to a wonderful organization called Guilt, and maybe someday laugh about it, because that's what we do to ourselves. We don't congratulate ourselves. All we do is beat ourselves up.
Yeah. Well, Gail, I want to be here to congratulate you. You're the most amazing person and an example of a fine human being. And I think that about you. But, you're an example of someone who stands up for the rest of us. And you're doing that right now. So thank you. It actually brings tears to my eyes. So you're really special, and you mean a lot to all of us listening.
I thank you very much. And it's you can tell it's from my heart. Mm-hmm. And it's a pained heart.
Yes, I know, and you're amazing. So I don't want to cry on camera, but Dirk, how did you feel listening to Gail talk about that? Because I think that's, that's humanity right there, right?
Yeah, no, I know. I can. We're often our own worst critics, right? We say things to ourselves that we would never say to someone else in a similar position. And I totally agree. Spaces where we can support each other's humanity, especially people who really get it, like fellow caregivers. So really are the only ones that can know what it's like to be in the role that and the position that you're in.
Yeah.
Because it's really isolating. And so that kind of connection, especially if it allows you to really have some grace for yourself as you have grace for others, that's really so important.
And it's hard to stand up for yourself, right? I think that's interesting when you show up for so many people, but this notion of being vulnerable and actually then pushing back a little bit sometime, I think is important.
I just, we didn't get a chance yet to talk about this, but I just got done on Sunday with, I rode with my bike with five other people, six other people across the country. I started in Kansas. I ended in San Diego on Sunday. And yeah, thank you. Four of the individuals have Parkinson's. And as a care partner, I'm watching them and I'm trying to keep them in, I'm not trying to keep them anyway. They did an amazing job. They taught me a lot. And I just dropped two of them off at the airport, and it was just a great experience where we all come together because there were so many people that came in and out. We had when we were in Colorado, we had some folks from Norway came in, and we had Polly came in.
Hey.
Yeah. And they still talk about their experience with Polly. It's great.
We had fun.
Part of
Yeah.
Polly's education. She's so well informed about people with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And we just, but as these different people from different backgrounds came in and were involved, we had to adjust because not everybody is the same. Not everybody is in the same place with Parkinson's. Not everybody's the same understanding of everybody else and everything. And there's a lot of times that where we had to, or for myself, I had to do a lot of breathing, a lot of self-reflection and things like that. What we're talking about, just to be able to work with others. In the Parkinson's community, but then also people that don't have. There was a couple of people that don't have family with Parkinson's there, and so it was a new experience for them. They had friends, but they didn't have family. But it was,
Yeah, I think this is a big part of what keeps you going is community. So that's one thing. Somebody mentioned isolation earlier too, and I think that's another thing that we just have to throw back out to everyone is make sure you have a community. Certainly we brought Dirk in on the conversation today to say, chaplains can be a very valuable part of your community, and here's how. But I want to just pause we only have 9 minutes left. But Dirk, I wanted to ask you, somebody just said, and we've heard this many times from our listeners, nobody ever asks, what about me? Like, how am I doing?
yeah.
And when you they ask about the person with Parkinson's, but they don't ask, how are you doing? Or if I think they maybe do, but we also don't want to dive into it. So in your experience, maybe I can imagine that when you meet someone, maybe one of your first questions is, how are you doing? Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's such an important question. And I feel like, in a way, speaking from the Christian tradition, I feel like we've kind of labeled the caregiver role as this kind of like selfless, ever sacrificial kind of person who is just, have none of their own needs and would just totally be willing to keep giving and giving. And I don't think that is a human person, right? No one can just give up all of themselves without pausing to restore, without pausing to kind of, provide what they need for themselves to keep going. In fact, I think they need to do that more than even the person they care for in some ways, right? Just because of all these dynamics that you all highlighted. So I think that's like an unfortunate narrative, but one that we really have to kind of press against, that the caregiver needs care and needs to care for themselves as well, in whatever way they're able to.
And I think Bruce has a great follow-up, which is how do people respond when you ask them? And if they say just fine, do you let them get away with that? Like, how do they respond when you ask, how are you doing?
Well, I love that the acronym that someone said earlier for fine. And, and I've used that actually, I mean, without saying the F word, of course. I don't want to shut them being Chaplain. But I want to push back against that, right? Like, because I think if people say, oh, well, have you heard from me? Fine actually stands for all these things that is, and that might just be kind of a lighter moment to have someone actually say how they're really feeling. It kind of implies that, oh, actually saying fine, there's probably a whole lot else there. And if they want to go there, if they want to say more about that with me, I can hear it.
Yeah, right.
Since not everybody saw that comment in the chat, I will copy it for others here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think too, we had a few questions about other, modalities, and I want to remind people that back when we had a social worker on, oh my gosh, I'm going to blank on the name, who was very helpful and talked about
Kathleen Christ.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Was on the tip of my tongue. I just didn't have it right there. Kathleen Christ, who was so informative for us, and she talked about the importance of journaling and getting out some of these thoughts. You're not trying to write a masterpiece. You're trying to get your thoughts on paper to kind of clear your mind. Gail, you don't necessarily have to park it on the bookshelf, but sometimes you need to clear it, right? You need to be able to empty it out into another vessel, and sometimes that's done with writing, and not writing that matters, not anything anyone's going to look at, just write, and that can be very important and also very helpful for people, all of us, actually. I know it's helpful for me.
Yeah, somebody mentions music and poetry can be a place to find that release and calm.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll just quickly name under that umbrella of the On Being podcast, there's a podcast called Unbound,
Poetry Unbound.
That's another great one.
Yeah, Poetry Unbound is one of my favorites. Dirk, you and I are on the same wavelength. We've never met, but and they're 20 minutes long usually, and it's usually a very interesting dive into one poem, and the narrator is a wonderful student of poetry and also of human nature. And I would highly encourage people, even when you're just trying to get a moment for yourself, to find something like that really resonates with you, where you can go out and take a lap of the park by yourself, or shut yourself off on your deck since it's summer, or patio, and listen, have a listen, and let your mind just really come down. It's got some really nice soothing music attached to it. You don't have to think too hard, just let it wash over you. And I think that's a big part of self-care too. And everybody who knows me knows I hate that term self-care, but it's true. You have to help yourself. So let's think about that. Dirk, we're almost to the end of our hour with you, and I think you've been really helpful. The comment on Psalms got a lot of resonance in our chat, and I think people are going to go back and refer to that and read through that and maybe re-experience that as well. Those readings. Do you have anything else that you'd like that we've missed about your work as a chaplain, or work with people with caring for people with Parkinson's?
I can't think of anything. I'm really glad for how rich this conversation was. We really went to a lot of good places. So I just feel appreciative, and just appreciative that you all are creating this space for each other. It's so valuable. I mean, as you both would say. So I just commend you for that, and thank you for being interested in the role of the chaplain and all of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I know you're busy, and we really appreciate your time here. And you are a worthy successor to Judy Long.
Wow.
And also for everyone that's missed things in the chat, please know that I do spend quite a bit of time reading the transcript of the chat as well as the transcript of our whole conversation, and I write it up. It's all of those chats can be found, or all those my newsletters, and are lengthy, but they are inclusive because I want them to be a part of our record, and a good referral for you. So please do look for those in the Davis Phinney Foundation website. And also, we are recording this for better or worse, and we'll be putting it up on the YouTube channel because I think we want more people, not fewer people, to be able to experience the kind of support that is offered here, and especially when we have a wonderful expert taking time to be with us. So, Dirk, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, Gail and Pat, you guys are rock stars. Polly, thanks for keeping us on track. And
You're welcome.
Send everybody out with a happy 4th of July for those of us watching live. And, just keep hanging in there. You can do this. We love you.